Good afternoon. I hope you're all happy and well. I'm Jamila Robinson, the Philadelphia Inquirer food editor, and you are watching Let's Eat Philly, a program from Inquirer Live. Thank you all so much for being here. We are so excited that we're going to be talking about change in the restaurant scene here in Philadelphia. Uh, so we're live, and I'm so excited. So we're going to be talking to some of the most important chefs in Philadelphia, but more broadly, some of the best chefs probably in the whole world. So I'm going to introduce you to some of our favorite folks. Just a couple of little housekeeping notes for anybody joining the conversation. If you have questions, you can add in. You can, in the middle of your screen, you'll see the comment section, and you can add your questions there. I'm going to be introducing you first to Chef Omar Tate. Chef Omar of Honeysuckle is probably one of the most important chefs in America. His Honeysuckle project is redefining what a restaurant experience is, and his pop-up has been named by Esquire magazine one of the best pop-up in the country, and he is the chef of the year. Please welcome Chef Omar Tate.
Hey, everybody. Streaming live from my car.
Thank you so much for being here. Well, we're live at home. This is Inquirer Live, and we're live at home. We're also going to be also Chef Nak Sutatip Nak Suntaranon of Kalaya in South Philly is going to be joining us a little bit later, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to talk to you first. I've been saying for a couple of years now, one of the most important chefs in America is Omar Tate. Your ideas around art and music and how to bring that into food has really redefined what a restaurant experience can be. You're back in Philly, you've had this great homecoming. Can you talk a little bit about, what this year has been like for you and to be called Chef of the Year?
2020 has been a heck of a year for everyone, I'm very thankful and very blessed to be on the receiving end of the positive notes of it. But also at the same time, as much as I celebrate this grounding, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world, and so there's been mixed emotions. But overall, I'm very excited and thankful, and Philadelphia has welcomed me home with open arms after being in New York for 8 years and working on this concept Honeysuckle for the past 4 years pretty intensely, and I'm just really happy that it's being received and recognized for what it's bringing to the restaurant community at large.
So this topic is change makers, and so here for Let's Eat Philly, for all of you who are watching, it is to celebrate the Philadelphia Inquirer's new dining guide, Let's Eat Philly, which is a whole new concept around really celebrating people. And we've tried to divide this year's dining guide and do something a little bit different, considering the pandemic, to start to think about the people behind the restaurant. We wanted to really introduce you to people who we think are bringing change. And so, Omar, we've called you a change maker. And do you think of yourself as that? Do you think of yourself as a change maker? Do you think of yourself as someone who's really thinking differently about how restaurants fit into communities?
Absolutely. I don't think that I really began that way. My intention in the beginning with Honeysuckle, before it became this larger idea of a brick and mortar as grocery store, as a civic and community anchor, was really just to create a new space and place for Black Americans in the dining world, where a lot of the framing around Black foodways within restaurant spaces are tethered to either Southern, West Indian, or African experiences or representations on plates. I didn't see anything that really represented my modern experience as one who was born in the north of the United States, in a city. And oftentimes, when you think about what that looks like, it's not a pretty picture, and it's not really what anyone wants to see, and it's hard for us to celebrate. And what I really wanted to do was carve out a space where, regardless of what my experience was, it could be celebrated, acknowledged, and consumed by the market. So in that way, yeah. Since that's happened, it's I have been making change, and so at this point, I think I would say yes.
Well, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that I think are so interesting about your cooking is the way you bring this virtuosity. As somebody who studied music and cares a lot about music, there's this artistry and musicality that you bring to the dining experience. Can you talk about like your art and your poetry and how you bring that to the plate?
Yeah. I mean, music has always been important to me. Language has always been very important to me. I feel like food, whether we really recognize it or not, is a language, and it hits on several different notes. I mean, if you're hungry and someone feeds you, you know that they care. If it's someone you love, you know that it's an extension of love. It could be telling you many things. If you're sick, they may be feeding you something to cure your ailment. And so there's messaging, period, within food. And much like music, it tugs on the emotional parts of ourselves. And so the music that I grew up listening to, whether I liked it or not, was jazz and R&B and old soul. And then I grew into listening to more like alternative music and all sorts of things like that. And when I wanted to like send messages to my guests, aside from just cooking food, I wanted people to understand the substance and material behind the food. And I mean, there are many layers to the messages that I'm trying to give to guests. Just to touch on some notes, I want to touch on history. I want to touch on heritage. I want to touch on my place and environment, and all these different things come through intentional techniques, intentional presentations, through the poetry, at the menu as poetry, adjacent to a booklet of poetry that people get. And all of these things come from like a template or like a philosophy around blackness, like the portions of black culture that I feel like I represent, and how they can be, I mean, basically commodified into an experience.
Well, that experience, that's one of the things I find so moving because, we are contemporaries from a generational standpoint. My parents were the Black Panther Party. So things like your dishes around how they center history and center moments, especially around Blackness, I think are so interesting. For example, can you talk about your dish around the move bombing? Because we've seen in the last couple of days some news about Move and the city apologizing for the Move bombing, and that has been an inspiration for you in some of your cooking. So I would love it if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so my like yours, my grandparents' generation were involved with the Black Panthers here in Philly. They were in conversation and affiliation. They had relationships with people from Move, and I was born on May 11th, 1986, and so that's just like 369 days after the actual bombing. And so I truly believe in like a spiritual transference, and all of the weight and emotion and activism and energy. I think I was born into that. So when I was thinking about making this dish, I mean, I really don't even know. I can't remember why I decided to take on that issue. I just knew that I felt like I needed to, and I felt like that moment was kind of disregarded. And I mean, you can ask someone now if have they ever heard of Move, have they ever heard of Wilson Good, and have they ever heard of May 13th, 1985? A lot of people will say no. And so I wanted to really, I guess, kind of like have a funeral on a plate, for those children that died, for those homes that were lost, for all the people that were affected, and that translated into a piece of smoked turkey neck that was smoked in hay and coated in vegetable ash over a bed of beans and a broth of turkey with a bunch of Brazilian chili heat, which is it's a West African pepper that made its way to Brazil. Some fried sage, obviously. It took place on Osage Avenue and it was fried. So there's fried sage on the plate. And the plate itself was set upon or atop the hay that I used to smoke it, but the hay was actually on fire. And so when people got the dish, the hay was smoking as they received it with this charred, almost discarded looking piece of meat on the plate, kind of like I felt like the people were. And, you know, it was a heavy moment at dinner, but people remembered, and that was the whole point. And I mean, that it was also delicious. You know, the meat itself was delicious. It was sous vide for like 6 hours and cured in salt and sugar and spices and stuff. But you know, like it's important to me to, like I said, you know, whether it's beautiful or not, to be able to acknowledge the presence of Black culture, and sometimes it's just not always pretty.
Well, I think that's so interesting. And it's such a fascinating way to approach food. But it also tells, you know, what an experience can be. Mm-hmm. And what a dining experience can be. And I think that is a really fascinating piece of change. And you do this as a pop-up. And so you've cooked at South Philly Barbacoa and a number of different places. I know you have, you're planning a pop-up coming up pretty soon. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what is a restaurant? What can a restaurant be? Does it matter if it's in one place or we're moving them around?
I mean, when the pandemic hit, I actually spent a lot of time with that question. You know, I mean, my pop-ups were taking place either in a restaurant, but the approach to them has always been an adherence to what we now understand to be what traditional restaurants are, which are coursed meals, usually 3 courses with exquisite service, and sometimes there's white tablecloths and things like that. And what I wanted to do with my dinner experience was, in terms of Black culture, make that experience just as equitable from my perspective as any other culture putting their work on a plate. And when all that disappeared and I couldn't do the pop-up anymore, it really made me go back to see, like, what does restaurant really mean? And the origins, etymologically, of the word simply mean to restore in Latin. And so if we are in service of one another to give each other food, I mean, when we're depleted of energy, we go to a place of restoration. And that's kind of how this, how I was able to really reconstruct what Honeysuckle could be in the future as a place to, like, really holistically restore people, whether it's through a dining experience or through a shopping experience. People need to be nourished and can be nourished in many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great segue for me to have Chef Tate Suntaranon from Kalaya to join us in this conversation where we're talking about, if you're just joining, this is Let's Eat Philly, a program of Inquirer Live from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Jamila Robinson, and joining us are the wonderful Chef Omar Tate, and also, if you can join us, Suntaranon.
สวัสดีค่ะ Hello everybody. Hi Jamila. Hi Omar.
It's
Thanks
great.
for having me.
Thank you for joining us. This conversation about change making, Omar was just saying that, like, what can a restaurant experience be? What can a market be? And we were talking about art. And I think your restaurant, Kalaya, has some of the most just stunningly beautiful food from a visual standpoint, but is also beautiful. You know, it tastes beautiful too. Can you talk a little bit about not only the beauty that comes in your dumplings and your branzino, but your experience bringing Kalaya to South Philly?
Okay, so the whole idea of bringing Kalaya to South Philly or to Philadelphia is just I want to bring the memory of my childhood. I want to bring my culture. I want to bring the real Thai fine dining experience. And I have zero expectation when I plan to open the restaurant. I didn't know that it's going to be a huge success. I don't know it's going to be a failure. I know just I am pursuing my dream. And I have the great support from people who love me. I have lots of encouragement. I just know that I have to go for it.
So can you talk a little bit? So your restaurant is in South Philadelphia, and
Yes.
Chef Omar, please feel free to jump in here as well. Can you talk about what a restaurant can mean to a neighborhood? And you've also opened a market, also in the same neighborhood. What do you think that brings to have this
Okay.
kind of Thai experience there?
Yes. So like Chef Omar said, the restaurant is can be the restoration, the place that you restore and renew and rejuvenate. Because food is what brought people together. And for me, being a part of community in Italian market, I think that's really what kind of take very important part of, being Kalaya. We've been embraced with our neighbor. They all welcome us with their open arms. I mean, the neighbors around me, they stop, whenever they heard great news, they congratulate me. We try to give the business to our purveyors in the market. So, for us, like especially during pandemic when the world stopped, but we didn't stop. The purveyors in the market, they need the business, but we gave them most of our business during that time. So it's like the community that helping each other. And that's what the restaurant about. It's like people being together, sharing love, sharing the economic, sharing the conversation. The restaurant is like center of the community.
Yeah, I mean, that area is so interesting. I got to talk about the experience that I actually had at your restaurant just probably a month ago now.
When you sneak in and they're telling me who you are. Hello.
Exactly. I had a mask on and everything.
Yeah, Omar came undercover.
It's really fun at this point. Becoming a person that people recognize is interesting. I guess I got to start announcing myself.
So I looked at him like, are you Omar Tate?
I was having a meal with two friends, and I mean, first of all, the meal was exquisite, and you overfed us. And I still have the soup, and it was left over, and I froze it. Oh, I'm sorry. I froze it.
Don't get too excited.
I know. You see that, right?
Yeah.
I froze it because I wanted to share it with my mom, so she's going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And but the coolest part about that entire experience is like after we got up and paid, we went down the street, and I didn't know that the market. This might have been the first weekend that the small market was open.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we go inside. I didn't really know where I was, and the person was like, "Oh, hey, Omar." And so the person from the server or whoever, maybe someone who even just poured my water, knew who I was, and then remembered me and made me feel welcome again down the street. And that's, to me, that's kind of like the experience that is telltale of the experience at the Italian market in general. It's like it's more than just a tourist destination. It's a place that people call home and actually live in.
Exactly.
Yeah, like mothers, parents, children. The neighborhood itself has kind of transformed from its like Italian roots and heritage here, and it's become more dominated by Mexican traditions and stores and things like that. But like all of Philadelphia is represented there. My aunts go down there to go buy fish, at the fish markets. I'm good friends with the people at South Philly Barbacoa and now at Kalaya. And so it kind of like just gives you a big Philadelphia hug down there, and like that's the restoration that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and for me, the sense of small business, family-owned business during this time is very important because it's about self-sustain. And if we could like build a community that self-sufficient, self-sustain, instead of looking in the big picture and being so capitalism, I think this is the way that we could all survive this.
Oh, that's a big change you're talking about. That's like that kind of community oriented, really looking
Oriented,
out
yeah,
for each other.
for each other,
Can you,
support each other.
yeah, Chef Knott, Omar has brought up your market, which if for those of you who are watching, if you haven't been to the market, you need to stop by. Not only for prepared dishes, but that sauce you put in your food that I want to drown myself in is there. And and for those who don't, there are no words. There's nothing short of expletives to explain, these dishes. Can you talk about wanting to start a market and the importance of having those dishes inside Kalaya Thai Market?
Okay, I want to start the market because I saw that location because I'm a good friend of Sal, the owner of Claudio's, and I go see Sal every day for 9 years with no reason. I just go there and back him, and it used to be his mozzarella shop, and then he just closed it, and the space been empty for a long time, and we grew out of our prep space at Kalaya. And I kept asking Sal, what are you doing with your space? He said, nothing. I said, you have the big walk-in. Can I use them? He looked at me like, why? I said, I just like the walk-in. I need a walk-in. Yeah, because I want to keep give my staff more prep space so we all don't have to step into each other. And, Sal was like, okay, this woman crazy enough. I'm just going to give it to her. And so we've been using that prep space since before pandemic. And then I saw there was heavy foot traffic. I've been into the market. I said for 9 years, I know that there is a business opportunity there. That must be my mother in me. So what my mother taught me since, I was young because I born and raised in the market. So I decided, okay, I am going to open the market. I am going to open the place that people can come grab quick lunch, good lunch from Kalaya, but in the most friendly price. I want to have all my ingredients there that one of my staff can, educate people who come in, my customer. We can bring our Kalaya to the next level, connect with the customer that, whoever come in, you don't have to come in it with us. You come grab some sugar or salt and have the conversation about ingredients. So like I said, I want it to be a place that that's why I name it Kalaya Market. It's going to be the real market that, is a sense of community that you don't have to come in splurge. You just come in, buy one Thai iced tea and talk to me about, the ingredients, how this work. You can come and grab the curry paste that we made with lots of love. And then, we teach you, we walk you through the whole thing. So that's the whole idea, just to connect with the community.
Yeah. Well, let's go to West Philly because that's a project, Chef Omar, that you are working on. Is also a market. Can you talk about your Honeysuckle project and your GoFundMe? I would love for you to tell our viewers about that.
Yeah, so we're currently raising funds to purchase a building in West Philly where I'm not from, but my mother's lived in this neighborhood for 10 years. And I'm actually sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store that closed, that inspired this idea. This neighborhood is more or less suffering from food apartheid and food insecurity. Other people know it more recognizably as a food desert. But the needs of the community are really going to be represented and addressed in this space that will be a grocery store, a cafe, but also when the cafe is not open, I really hope and plan to invite the community inside to host whatever events they would like, or we ourselves, my wife and I, as my business partner, we want to do educational engagements that involve food or literature or art, all those things kind of happening simultaneously in this space to address not just needs, but also just interests of the Black community here in West Philly. I don't think that I've seen anything that really represents the vision that I'm really putting out there, especially as it distinctly is drawing off of Black culture in terms of what the products are going to be, who's producing the products, how we're going to build our distribution network, how the food's being prepared, and how it's being talked about. I think that it's especially right now, it's time to see that sort of amplification of Black economy represented in the neighborhood where a lot of Black people live.
And then where can folks find out more about your project?
honeysucklephl.com, or honeysuckle_projects on Instagram, and also Coltrane215 on Instagram, which is my personal one.
Great. So, when you talk about, changing a community, and I would love it if you can expand a little bit more when we talk about food apartheid, and we talk about, food deserts, to your point, that was a word, or that was a phrase that was used, pretty regularly. But I would say over the last year or so, we've really started to change that language about food apartheid. And how can how will this project address that issue?
Through sourcing. I mean, the issue with food insecurity, and the difference between a desert and an apartheid is that a desert is a natural occurrence of like that, meaning that the earth cannot produce certain things to sustain a certain kind of life within an environment. Apartheid is a system or a structure that's put in place by humans to create a maligned existence for certain individuals. And so it's not that there's no food in these neighborhoods and that people can't eat. It's just that people can't eat to thrive. So what we really want to do is make sure that we have, we're providing access to fresh vegetables, we're providing access to fresh meats, but also not in a way where, like, if a Whole Foods just dropped into this neighborhood and was putting food out there that didn't really speak to not just the needs, but also the desires, and through a responsible and respectful cultural lens. Just because the food's here doesn't mean that people are going to buy it, So it's truly a holistic approach. It's an approach from the heart, and it's an approach that I really think that, it's not going to be an overnight success in terms of it's going to be gangbusters and all everyone's just going to come and stop shopping at ShopRite. But what will happen is I think that people will see people in their neighborhood that are trying to do something really good and activate change, and then be supported in that way, and that will permeate throughout the community. Whether it's through, again, the word nourishment doesn't always have to be food. Whether it's just coming in and having a conversation like they do at Kalaya's grocery store, or if they're actually coming in to buy the prepared jollof rice packages that we plan to have in the store. So, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think those kinds of things are really important to have, not food that speaks to a community, food that's affordable, food that represents a community and also introduces people to other kinds of foodways. And speaking of foodways, one of the things that I wanted to say up at the top was that the two of you are, it's not only that, the Philadelphia Inquirer sees you as real change makers, but the recognition that you are both getting nationally for your work and for your efforts. Esquire magazine just named Chef Omar Chef of the Year, with the pop-up of the year for Honeysuckle. Kalaya top of the list for best new restaurants in America. You are James Beard a semifinalist, and this kind of recognition, I think, really brings so much attention to Philadelphia and this world-class food scene that that we all represent. Can you talk a little bit, either of you, about what that means for you to have that kind of recognition, to be, when I call you, two of the best chefs in the world, and to have that kind of feedback coming at you?
Omar, go ahead.
It's the humble chefs.
I know, right? Well, I mean, Philly, yeah, I'm born and raised in Philly, so I'm ecstatic just so I can say that Philly, did something that New York or DC didn't do this year. So that's pretty cool. No, but also I think that it really kind of just speaks to there's a truth and authenticity that comes through. When I had, I think it was lunch. It was the middle of the day. I was drinking, so I can't really tell what time of day it was. But when I had lunch at Kalaya a month ago, Knock came out and she was her vibrant self, and the dishes weren't trying to be anything that they weren't, and they were extremely beautiful and colorful. And I felt like, I felt like I was in her mental space, even though we were outside on a sidewalk next to a car that was trying to back up into us at one point. But that's another story. I think there's something to be said about there's an openness in the world right now where people are more than ever willing to accept new cultures, but also accept those new cultures outside of the lens of Eurocentricity. We're not I'm not making Black American food and dressing it up so that you're ingesting it because it still mirrors a French aesthetic, and that I didn't find that at my meal at Kalaya at all, like not even close. So I really think that the work speaks for itself. Apparently, Knock has been in the neighborhood for 9 years, bugging people about her food, and I've been working on this project for at least 5 years, bugging people about my food. And honestly, I can't wait to actually have people in Philly. I mean, I've only done one pop-up in Philly. Come taste my food. It's kind of like it's kind of funny to me that not many people have had a honeysuckle dinner experience here in Philly, but I represent Philly, so I think it's beyond outstanding and due time, honestly.
And Chef Knock, when we talked previously, I said, you're cooking. I've said this is the best Thai restaurant in America, and you said no, don't say that. And I said no, it's really true, and I say it sincerely because and I think Chef Omar, you just said something that just made the hair on my neck stand up because you said you could feel like you were inside her soul. And I think that is, it's like makes me palpitate a little bit because I'm like, yes, that's it. That is what that experience is like, because your dishes are so beautiful. So can you talk about that, that beauty that you're trying to bring?
Yes. So the beauty are from my childhood memory. I cook from my childhood memory. The flavors, the presentation, everything is about my life. I grew up in a poor family that living a very sophisticated life about food. Even the time that we almost have no money, the food always lavish. Always, my mom will buy the best fish or the biggest durian when in durian season just to feed us. Whenever I am thinking of my menu, I always gather my thought about the conversation of me and my mother, because whenever we talk almost every day, I've been gone from home for 38 years. Anytime I call her, part of conversation was, what are you cooking today? That's how we talk about food every day. And it's built in my head, is always reflected on my food. And my three ladies in my family, my mother, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my aunt, they are beautiful and they are a great cook and I love them. And this is the way of me bringing them, show them to the world. Even, the three ladies, they're not with us anymore, just only my mother that I hold her very close to my heart. That's our food. They cannot come to America, but the food that I built for you guys from my memory to represent them, that's what you got. That's what everybody's seeing. That's what the world's seeing. So I am not a best cook. I'm not the best restaurant. I am a woman who have the best memory that is being built from a three strong woman that make me who I am. So
that just sent me. I'm a woman with the best memory. I mean, isn't that when we are thinking about how we're cooking now, or we're thinking about what we want to put out in the world, how much of that really is memory, how much of that is really taste memory.
Yes.
Just to the audience, thank you so much for being here. I'm Jamila Robinson, the food editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer. You're watching Inquirer Live. Let's Eat Philly. I'm here with Chef Suntaranon and Chef Omar Tate of Honeysuckle. If you have questions in the middle of your screen, you will see the comment section and you can drop them now. And I'm going to start to turn it over to the audience for questions. And I just feel sent by you saying, like, I'm a woman with the best memories. And there's a question coming to us that asks, can you tell us about the dishes that you may be working on or things that you may have found challenging?
So I've been working on, I was going to say don't tell anybody, but we're telling everybody. But
don't tell anybody.
Kind of going back to this year, 2020. It's been a great year, and it's been a tough year, and with a lot of the violence that's been going on, centered around the death of black people and black bodies dropping. The poet in me has been centered on just the denial of breath or the denial of breathing, and so I've been thinking on dishes that are actually small terrariums that have small life in them and different pieces in them that represent black bodies amongst the green, like, little lettuces that I'm planning to put in them as the lettuces are breathing the denial of breathing within this small space, and have guests internalize that, because it's a human right to breathe. It really came about from the Ahmaud Arbery one, when to run you have to breathe, and most people breathe rhythmically, and the rhythm of his life was stopped. We can say that about a lot of people, and so a lot of the dishes aren't always historical. History is unveiling itself before our very eyes, and so in the future you'll probably see a dish like that coming from me.
Wow, that's stunning. That's Chef Knocker, are there things that you're going to be thinking about adding to your menu that you're maybe working on?
Yes, something that can beat Chef Omar completely. Very competitive. I'm planning to. I'm sorry, Omar. I love you.
I love you. This is great.
I'm planning to perfect my 2 dishes that I started with. My first menu, only 15 items on the menu, and there are 2 that I took it off because of the pandemic happened, and with the outdoor seating, it's not like outdoor seating friendly. But now we're going back to takeout, so I'm gonna bring the pork with shrimp paste back, and also pla tod kamin, the fish with turmeric. But I
yes, ma'am.
it. I am going to perfect it to be more takeout friendly. Like I have to create like how I'm going to cook the fish to by the time it gets to you, not gonna be too dry. The color, the scent of shrimp paste, that is not gonna too off-putting when you open the containers. That's two special dishes that I'm working on. It seemed to be not much about it, but trust me, it's a lot in details.
Yeah. Well, you just raised something really important, and I think it's probably important to talk about. Change is takeout. Change is sitting outdoors. That restaurant experience has changed so much.
Yes.
I too had a car buzz me, and when eating at Kalaya,
I know.
and had to turn around and worry about the cars. The pandemic really has had this extraordinary impact on the industry writ large, from how we connect to each other, the food we eat, how we eat it, how it arrives to us, talking to our servers in masks. Can you both kind of give a snapshot for, how you've worked through the pandemic and how you've, adjusted these experiences?
Okay. Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I worked through the pandemic by follow the news and I just reevaluate the situation. I read, and I just see what is going on around the globe. And then each and every day, I will the end of the night, I come home, I talk to my husband, or I talk to my team about what we're gonna do next. So each and every day we reassess the situation and we just pivot. We just but the idea is to keep ourselves safe, to keep my staff safe, to keep customers safe from the pandemic, not the car. So that's the whole idea, and that's the guideline that guide us through. When we know that the pandemic happened, the first thing we do is we bought a lot of containers. When we know the second shutdown is happening around us, we again start doing the same thing. When we know the weather get cold, we start building our supply on the inventory that we needed. So, and like I said, keep our customers safe, keep our staff safe. That's the whole thing.
Oh, that's an important thing, Omar.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do a pop-up. So basically when the pandemic hit, all of my pop-up engagements just disappeared because, me being hosted in other people's places just wasn't going to be a thing. And so when I moved back home, my pop-up shifted into a takeout format that was being hosted by my good friends at South Philly Barbacoa. They allowed me to utilize their space to do Honeysuckle and takeout format. But that stopped in June, so I could focus on building out the Honeysuckle Community Center grocery store model. And I'm actually being affected in a very different way now, in that I was planning on hosting pop-ups in conjunction with Walnut Street Cafe. They were gracious enough to give me space, and we've had to cancel them all because of several different things, the election and now the new COVID restrictions just won't allow for that to happen. And so what we're going to do now is do a grocery store pop-up virtually on our website that should be launching come January. So the shifts have all been interesting, and to Knox's point, every place has different. Well, everyone has a baseline of health safety, but every restaurant also has their own notches and steps above. What those new guidelines are, and so having to shift to meet the primary and base level expectations plus another host's expectations has been interesting for me. And then also my own expectations around safety and health and all those things as well. It's threefold for me in terms of how I have to engage with it.
Yeah, well, that helps answer one of the questions from one of our folks on Facebook who is asking, when's your next event going to be? I was looking forward to your event at Walnut Street Cafe, first at November, and then pushed back to December. So we're looking forward to that in December. Lots of folks who are saying that it's great that you're coming back to West Philly, and if you have a target date that you're hoping to open the Market and Community Center.
The goal is the end of 2021. That's the goal. We're looking for a building. Hopefully we'll have a building by early next year, if not the end of this year, and get to work.
So we also have a couple questions about childhood memories, which is also one of my favorite things to talk about, is talking about taste memories. Folks want to know both of your most memorable foods from childhood, and also, and for Nak especially, how your how memories of your loved ones are taken throughout the country, from where your mother is.
So the memory of my childhood, the food, if you talk about the food, there are two questions here, right? Right? So the first one was memory of my childhood food. And we're going to talk about that. And then I will ask you to repeat the next question.
Sure.
Okay. So there are two things. The food that it's just I cannot get it off my mind was first one, the rice salad, khao yam. That's kun tuat. Kun tuat means my great-grandmother. She it's just beautiful yellow rice. She make it with sand ginger, and also turmeric. And I had that once when I was young, and I kept asking my mother, what did Kuntuak make? How did she make it? And my mother, like, she just make it like that. I said, can you make it for me? And she said, it's not going to be the same. So that's one. And I cannot make it the same until now, because I cannot find sand ginger here this year. But one day I hope that I could, like, make that pretty close to what I had in the back of my mind too, so at least I can move past that. The other one, the oxtail soup that my mother made for us in one winter morning, that we sit down and we had it, and she put glass noodles in it. That's our breakfast before we go to school. I never forget that flavor, the smell of the oxtail, the broth, and the cilantro that we had. And the idea of three of us, me, my brother, two brothers, and my mother eating together that morning, I still remember.
How did you make it to school? I'd have went back to sleep.
I know, right? It's so good.
What about you, Chef Omar? What's your favorite food from childhood? And what are your favorite foods from childhood? What do you remember best?
I mean, my favorite foods, man, my mom used to bake bread. She liked to bake a lot, so she used to bake cookies and bake bread. She made her own pizzas and things like that. I really enjoyed my mom's spaghetti a lot when I was a kid. But my favorite thing that my mom makes is fried fish. What she does with her fish, she usually gets whiting, and she marinates it in mustard and then coats it in cornmeal and fries it, and she usually serves it with greens that have smoked turkey in it. And so, like, it's quite varied. We were also vegetarian for a while, so she used to make spinach with amino acids and garlic and couscous a lot. So it's very, the food that we ate growing up were pretty eclectic. But as far as honeysuckle is concerned, the name honeysuckle actually came from the experience of eating the stamen from the flower itself that grew along the side of our childhood home in Germantown, where I was raised. And so that name comes from that. And then every guest at Honeysuckle gets a glass of homemade Kool-Aid from real fruit that I make myself to enter the dinner space, because we had Kool-Aid pretty much like every meal, and I was responsible for making it. So
that's two unsungs: Kool-Aid and mustard. I think mustard is like an unsung seasoning, especially for fish. It's fantastic. If I think we're going to be wrapping up. So if there are any more questions for folks, just enter the chat. This is Inquirer Live. I'm Jamila Robinson. So I want to kind of start to wrap up by thinking about what kinds of change you two want to see in the world. This has been, to your point, just kind of an extraordinary year with a lot of change that's either been accelerated by the pandemic, or some things that the pandemic have really highlighted, issues that are endemic to the restaurant industry that have really highlighted, whether it's the small margins or different issues with labor and supply chain. But what are some things that you two really want to see change in the restaurant industry?
For me, I would love to see that people in the restaurant industry, especially front of the house and back of the house, get paid above the living wage. I want to see them get treated fairly. And it's just like, if this not beyond the dream, if they could get good health insurance, or fair like treatment when they got sick, or people who feed the other people, making the other people happy, they don't deserve to be hungry or living poorly. That's in my opinion.
I agree with Knock. I was definitely going to touch on the exact same point. To me, the answer isn't like what I would like to see change in the restaurant industry. Knock mentioned earlier, especially in like areas like the Italian market, restaurateurs are figuring out the answers for themselves in these dire times, by pulling staff together, by reducing restaurant owners are reducing their own salaries if they're taking salaries at all, just so they can continue to feed their staff, so that their staff can feed the community. Places like 215 People's Alliance has organized a group of community volunteers and restaurateurs to actually feed hungry citizens who can't even afford, much less going out to a restaurant, going out to the supermarket to buy their own meals. This is it's an institutional issue. It's a federal issue. It's an issue that probably deserves its own party as restaurant workers and food practitioners. Like, maybe we need our own party to lobby for specific needs, like straight up, like I don't, it's the things, it's not restaurants. Restaurants are just places, and they're not places if there's no people in them. And so who governs the people? The damn government. So like, that's the answer.
Yeah. Well, can you expand on that a little bit? Because in the last couple of days, there's, especially with the new restrictions in Philadelphia for indoor dining. One thing that we've heard in our coverage that you can find, for those of you who are watching, you can find at inquirer.com/food, are a lot of folks across the industry, from servers to restaurateurs to suppliers, have said, what we really need, if it's going to slip away, it's slipping away unless we have some intervention from the government, that it's not going to be enough just to limit indoor and outdoor dining, but that there needs to be this intervention. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? The Restaurants Act is held up in is held up in Congress. The Senate has adjourned. And then other politicians want it to be released from the HEROES Act. So can you talk about that kind of government intervention that needs to happen?
I wish I knew more about the intricacies about that. Maybe Knock could speak to that more than I can. I just don't know, because that's not my arena right now, and trying to open a space is taking priority. But what I do know is that just listening to restaurant owners, that it's not being taken care of properly.
Mm-hmm. So that is something that I already set my mind on when I know about the pandemic, when I saw it coming. We, as a small restaurant owner, have to be self-sustained. We have to be self-sufficient. We cannot rely on anybody to help us. Before election, it's happened. It's like, this is common practice before every election. Everyone in for themselves. Everything being put on hold. There are the other problem that those big guys, they don't worry about us. They worry about themselves. It's us who have to worry about ourselves, who have to find a way to survive. Sometimes even we have to be bleeding, we have to cut our arm, we have to cut our leg to survive. Do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I did. That's what we did at Kalaya, and it's helped us get through it. Mm-hmm. I don't see things in the big picture right now, because it's gonna make me angry, it's gonna make me upset, it's gonna make me lost focus. I just look at about what in front of me, and I just take it one day at a time, focus, and be mindful, and know what we are doing. Don't lose track. Otherwise you're going to be all over the place, and you're going to wait for the help that is never come. If it's come, fine. If it doesn't come, you're here. You're here because you survived. You're here because you pulled yourself out of that black hole. And there's something that we all should be proud of. Whoever survived until now, today, as a small restaurant owner, we all are heroes.
That's something that you couldn't have buttoned that up in a more Philly way, right? Yeah. That grit, that independence, that sense of survival, that sense of coming together, and that laser focused on trying to survive. And I think that is really speaks to what's happening right now, with Everybody Eats and all of these other organizations that are coming together, Save Philly Restaurants, to really bring people together to talk more about this issue and to talk more about change across the entire industry. We're coming to the close of our program, and so I want to thank the two of you. From the it's so I'm stuttering because I'm so excited to hear your perspectives, because I think what the two of you have brought to Philly and brought to the Philly food scene really shows not only what a restaurant can be to the community, and how we can all think about change in a different way. Thank you so much, Chef Omar Tate, Chef Suntaranon of Kalaya. You can visit Kalaya in South Philly, as well as Kalaya Thai Market. You can visit Honeysuckle 215. Did I get that right? On Instagram to find out more.
Yeah, Honeysuckle Projects.
Honeysuckle Project. Forgive me. To find out more about Chef Omar's project and community center that's going to open, targeted in 2021 in West Philly. Again, I'm Jamila Robinson, the food editor. You can visit Inquirer.com, Let's Eat Philly, for all of our continuing coverage. You can follow. Omar, can you shout out your Instagram once again?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's honeysuckle_projects. And then it's honeysucklephl.com is the website.
And Nat, can you shout out your social? Where are you on Instagram and Facebook?
Okay, so Kalaya Philly and Kalaya Thai Market. And if you want quick lunch, grab and go, come to Kalaya Thai Market. We're there for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all of you in the audience. Thank you for joining us here on Inquirer Live. You can hit the subscribe button if you like more of this kind of content. Again, visit inquirer.com/subscribe or inquirer.com/Let's Eat Philly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Omar. Bye.